Hello, YouTube. So, this is episode 3 for the spring series, and today I am very excited to talk to you about a topic, navigating and understanding your triggers. So, the word trigger is a very interesting word, and it has become a very, very, very popular and used on so many levels. And today I'm going to spill out some truths about triggers. I am going to share what I believe and what I've learned about navigating understanding my triggers. There are some people who do not like using the word trigger and prefer the term activate, so you can substitute as you're listening with that word. But I'm going to use the word trigger because to me that is what resonates and lands. And it is something of how I used it in my healing and my growth. So, what is a trigger? Let's just get it down. Trigger is basically something happens and you have a negative emotion towards that situation. So, and whether you act on it or not, it usually creates a sensation that is uncomfortable, a sensation that you're not a fan of, whether it is anger, sadness, anxiety, any low emotion. That's usually what a trigger creates. And triggers usually they stem from somewhere. They don't just happen for the sake of happening. It's not like somebody triggers you and you're like, oh, like I've never don't know anything about this. It's like usually it's because it's stemming from something and it's whether it is mirroring what you're currently navigating back at you for you to look at, whether it is something that is that needs to be healed from your childhood or your teenagers or your 20s, 30s, as we talked about in the other videos. It usually stems from somewhere. It could be a belief about yourself, but really, what triggers really do is it takes a magnifying glass and it magnifies something for you to look at. Now, triggers happen a lot and in our lifetime they happen a lot. There's a lot that comes up, especially like when it comes from like external environments, from what people say to what you watch on TV to what you see on social media. There is always going to be things that pop up and triggers are going to pop up. Now, you are not meant to work on every single trigger all the time, or else you will drive yourself crazy. And you want to navigate what feels right and what feels good to look at. And so I highly suggest when there are repetitive triggers, like if it's the same thing like coming up over and over, that may be something you want to have a little bit more priority than something that happens once in a while. And and so that is like one way to navigate it. So, triggers. Let's talk about them. We I've noticed something in this day and age that a lot of people like to say, "Oh, that triggered me." But then nothing's being done about it on their end, or it is to just put the blame on the other person. Like, "Oh, that triggered me." And so can you not say that? And so, in this episode, and that you're here because you are ready to work on yourself, you're here because you're ready to look on your own stuff. So, I'm going to ask you for a little bit more radical self-responsibility. This is not the episode where you're going to tune in and that I'm going to tell you, well, that's their problem. They shouldn't have said that. They shouldn't have done this. That's not this episode. This episode is how can you look at what triggered you so you can learn more about yourself and you can grow and heal your own wounds and your own shit, basically. This is not blaming the outside world. Now, you may think, well, Julie, that person, called me an asshole, or that person did this thing that was very mean. Yeah, people can do things that are not okay. And I'm not saying that what they did was right or wrong. But this episode is basically about how you can look at things yourself and to work on you. So and so may have said the wrong thing and may have done the wrong thing, and it's not okay. It's never been okay, but they are on their own journey and they're going to learn things their own way. And unfortunately, we can't sit and control other people's lives, but what we do have control is our healing. What we do have control is to look at our own stuff. So, I want you to take a moment and think of maybe in the last week, what was something that triggered you? What was something that caused a negative emotion come up? It could be anywhere from somebody saying something to someone doing a certain action. It could be even you scrolling on social media and you saw someone post something and you're like, that's not okay. Anything that caused like a sense of like anger or sadness or hurt or any form of pain, I want you to bring that up to your mind right now. And first off, I want you to take a moment and ask, how do you feel now that it's brought up? How did you feel in that moment? Now, your emotions when it comes to triggers are valid. They are valid. No emotions when it comes to that is wrong and it's not right. It's just your emotions and how you feel, and you're allowed to feel the feels. And so, whatever emotion it brought up, I want you to bring that up to the surface. And I want you to think, okay, this is what it feels like. And so, by bringing this up to the surface, I want you to get curious about that emotion. So, let's say it's anger. Ask yourself, get curious, like, what is anger here to show me? What is, what am I here to learn about this? And I want you to get to like ask as if like ask and if it's more than one emotion, like imagine yourself you're having a meeting with your emotions and ask each of those emotions, why do you feel this way? Why are you popping up? And see what stems from it, because the emotions are valid, but they are also here to show you something about this trigger, to show you something for you to grow. And so first step is really honoring these feelings, and it's really like allowing them to be there. And the minute you allow your emotions to be present, the minute you sit with your emotions, not only do you learn more about yourself, but you actually allow your emotions to pass through. What happens is that when there's a trigger and the automatic response is that I just got triggered and it's their fault because they said XYZ, and I'm just going to be angry, but I'm just going to walk away. Then you're you're not allowing the emotion to fully be present and to fully be processed. And so then what happens is that gets buried underneath, like gets pushed under the rug. And then someone else says that same thing, does that same action 3 months, 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, and it brings it all back up. And then the more you push it down, the more you put it under the rug, the bigger the thing gets. Imagine you're pushing stuff under the rug, right? Eventually that bump is going to get pretty big, and eventually you're going to start seeing through it. Really, like if you think of it, the rug's going to get big, but the rug can't cover all angles. And so it is going to explode, and it is going to cause a bigger and bigger reaction from you. So you need to bring those emotions up and you need to allow them to process through. Now, once you've allowed that to process through, once you've gotten curious about your emotions, once you've rode the wave, because eventually the emotions are going to pass, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. There's a few things. One, ask yourself, does this belong to me? Yes or no? So sometimes what happens is that certain triggers are actually not yours and that you've taken on from the outside world. And this will go more into depth because I learned through it through human design, and there's just certain elements in human design that basically you take on things from the outside world, and then sometimes you allow them to define you and that you make them part of you, but they're actually not. So asking yourself the question, does this belong to me? And this is irregardless of whether you know your human design or not. There will be a part of your body that will answer yes or no. There will be a part of you that knows the answer to that question. And and so you ask yourself, does this belong to me? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, we'll get to yes in a second. The answer is no, then I would get even more curious and asking, can I let this go? Am I ready to let this go? Am I ready to put this down? Can I put it down? Do I want to put it down? And will I put it down? And see what pops up through there. If you, for some reason, you cannot put it down, let it go, ask yourself why. And I would guide you through to going through maybe a meditation sequence, a meditation practice, tapping into taking a few breaths in, sitting with yourself and asking, why is it that I can't let this go? Why can I not put it down if it doesn't belong to me? And are you making it mean something about your identity? Are you making it mean something about you? And try and see if you can get a little bit more clear with that. Now, if it does belong to you, then here's the other thing you're going to ask yourself. The So when, especially when it comes to, so this is going to be a little bit more relatable when it comes to like someone else said or did something. And I'm going to ask you to put on a different hat for yourself, put on a third party perspective, so to speak. So sometimes when people say something that trigger you or people do something that triggers you, the trigger is basically it's for you to look at. And it's not necessarily that what they said or did was actually a bad thing. It is just something for you to navigate within yourself. And so this is the next question you're going to ask yourself is take yourself out and you for this part to do, like I said, you need to ride your emotions. You need to get to that other side of a little bit of place of neutrality to be able to put on this third party hat. You to try to do this when you're in the shit is not going to work. Like it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Not saying it's not going to work. It's possible, but it might be a little bit more difficult. So get yourself out of it, ride the wave, and then come to this place, put on the third party hat. So the third party hat is, did what this person say, is it bad? Is it actually mean? Is it actually like not okay? And so classic example, somebody smiled at you and you're like, oh, how dare they smile? Or somebody asked you, how are you? And you're like, oh, I hate when people ask me that. It's just, how are you? It's just a smile. It's not, they didn't do or say anything. So it's looking at that. If so, and then, so it's asking yourself, like, because I feel like once you figure out of what that other person said, if it wasn't a big deal, it takes a little bit of a pressure off towards, especially towards emotion towards that person. So that's why I like to ask this question. Now, if it is something that they did that was not okay, then recognize and honor that as well. We want to recognize both. We don't want to ignore or avoid either or. And so then after this, like after this step, You want to figure out like why has this brought come up? And so this is where you can do numerous things. One, you can look at what is currently going on in your life right now. What are some of the challenges and some of the things that you're navigating? And maybe you haven't had the time to look at. Maybe you're too busy trying to do all the things. And so, for example, like a classic, like you getting triggered by somebody saying, "How are you?" It could be that you're so overwhelmed, you have so much going on your plate, and that someone asking that question, but there's maybe a part of you that would hope that they would actually, already see that you're a hot mess and that they don't need to ask you that question. So what are you navigating and what are you going through? And so that is like one way to like kind of look at like certain triggers and say, okay, I was seeking validation, or I was expecting something from the other party. Like I was expecting they knew what was going on with me. I was expecting them to whatever you were expecting or whatever you were seeking some form of validation. So it is honoring that. So that could be like one element as to why a trigger would come up, especially when it's something such as how are you or someone smiling at you. And so this is where you can create space for yourself. And one, know that everybody's dealing with their own shit, their own things in their own life. And sometimes they're maybe not paying attention to what's going on in yours. And there's nothing wrong with that, because when you're going through your own shit, sometimes you're not paying attention to what's going on in someone else's life. And it's normal. We're human beings. We're all sitting here trying to do our very best. Really, we are. And so if it was a trigger like that, that you feel like you have so much play and that you're seeking validation, and that, you expected someone to be or do something and they did the opposite, like whether it was an action, like, your partner comes home and he knows you've been having a bad day, or they know you've been having a bad day, and you were expecting a bouquet of flowers and they bring a bouquet of flowers, so they come home empty-handed and you're like, man, mhm, mm. You're angry because you're like, oh, they like should have thought of me. If it's a trigger like that, like why were you seeking that? Why were you seeking that form of validation? And so that is like one way to like kind of get curious and allow yourself to say, okay, like this is the stage I'm at. This is where I'm at. I have a lot on my plate. I like to say the universe wouldn't bring me things I couldn't handle, and then it's like taking time for yourself, a little bit more self-care. Do things that fill you up, like whether it is as simple as lighting a candle or reading a book or taking a bath or going in nature, going for a walk, whatever it is, but also allow yourself to recognize the stage of life you're in. And if there's a lot of shit that's going on, and if you're navigating a lot, honor that. Honor that you're doing your very best and that you're just trying to take one day at a time. And that, in that shit show, there is going to be things that are going to trigger you. And we'll get to like some more about this that I'm going to speak to next. If it was a trigger that, so this is the other piece of it, it could be a trigger that came from, it bringing up a feeling that you felt before. And so this is where inner child healing, inner teen healing, inner 20s healing can come in, is going back and seeing where did it stem from. And so you can look at that. I did already an inner child healing video, an inner teens and inner 20s video. So I definitely like recommend you having a look at that. And that will be a great place to get started. And so you can do prompts and reflection and meditation and seeing where it stems from and slowly start healing that version of you. And so the other thing when it comes to navigating and understanding your triggers is the reaction. And how do you react? How do you react in the moment? How do you react after? Now, sometimes what's going to happen is with triggers, especially when you're maybe not aware that it's a big trigger for you in the moment, you're going to react. You're going to say something, do something that you may not necessarily be proud of, or it may not be the best version of yourself. And that's okay. That's okay. You're a human being. You're a human being. But the key is, what do you do after? So what do you do after? So if you did react badly, how can you mend it? How can you, one, forgive yourself and be kind to yourself for reacting that way? Two, if it was towards someone, how can you chat with them, maybe apologize? And three is really looking within of like, why did that reaction get so big and what caused that big reaction? Um, I've lost my train of thought. So there, yeah, so that is like one element. If in the moment you didn't react and you held your emotions, great, amazing. And then you can kind of go into the process of like analyzing and figuring out why that trigger popped up and what caused that trigger. And so this is just one of the many ways on how you can sit with yourself and understand your own triggers and how to navigate them. Again, when it comes to triggers of what someone else did or what someone else said, yes, sometimes there's certain things that are right, there's certain things that are wrong, and maybe what they said was not right. And again, your feelings and your emotions are valid, but in the when it comes to healing and healing your own wounds, this is when you take your own responsibility for yourself and to look at it. And if there is any boundaries that, like, let's say it was your partner that said something that was not okay. If there's a boundary to be set, communicate that boundary after your emotional wave has passed, or maybe even if you able to communicate that boundary in a heightened emotion, if you have that level of emotional intelligence, communicate that boundary. If it has to be after the wave passed, then sit and have a talk with them and being like, this wasn't okay. Again, it is going back to that simple thing of, was what they did or say actually bad? Because if you go to them like, well, you said, how are you? And that I'm setting a boundary that you cannot ask me, how am I? Then that's it's a little like, much, right? It's like they didn't say anything wrong by asking, how are you? The whatever it was that they said, and if it's in a neutral tone, and you took it as something negative, then that is something for you to look at, not so much something for them to change. And if it is that they said something that was bad, if it wasn't okay, if they did something that wasn't good, then yes, this is where the boundary needs to be set. So this is why it's important to like look at putting on that third party hat and really looking at that. And so these are like many ways of navigating understanding your triggers. And so this is it for today's episode. If this resonated, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe to my channel. I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who like watched the previous video, the Healing Your Inner Teens and 20s. I was not expecting that much of a huge turnout and that many likes, and I got a few new subscribers. So welcome to my page, and so I just wanted to say thank you, appreciate you, and I will see you on the next episode here in the spring series.